Okay, back to our final part. Still no Coast Guard, so hopefully by the end of this video they'll show up. We've got one more part to our lesson 6, Principles of Design. So stick around and we'll get started. All right, we stopped on unity and harmony. These are kind of like rhythm and repetition, where they sort of play off of each other, or they sort of mean the same thing, honestly. So the definition is making all elements feel like they belong together, or like monogamous, or like they're connected. So some tips for this is stick to a consistent color palette, use texture or shapes that complement each other, and keep the mood consistent. So really opposite of the contrast one. Unity and contrast are like total opposites. So how can you apply the ingredients or the elements to do this? You can use analogous colors or colors that are close together on the color wheel. You can use monotone or monochromatic color as well. So you only are using one color. Um, Other ways to do this as well, but those are just a few. So I want you to answer, how is unity being achieved in Monet's Water Lilies? Same guy that did the Impression Sunrise. So just look at the piece and see which elements you see working to create a harmonious or unified environment. And I also want to preface unity and harmony. A lot of the times that gets confused with like this more like kind of, peace and love type thing. And I mean, that is similar. It's the same kind of like message, I guess. But as far as art goes, when we say unity or harmony, that means just that something is the same. Like there is a commonality between things, or there's the same elements being used. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's like the vibe is good kind of thing. It just means that things are connected and they're the same. So, with that said, how do you see unity being used in water lilies? And give some specific elements that you see working and how they're working. All right. So there's a few here, honestly. I think one is the color. For the most part, all of the color being used is analogous or they're close together on the color wheel. That makes up the majority of this piece. Another thing I see is shape. All of these little lily pads that we see here are very similarly shaped. There's not really one that sticks out more than the others. They all just sort of flow together. And then also line. He keeps this consistent downward or like vertical line here to kind of keep everything feeling the same, very like palm and just very much, there's no pop out moments or like contrasting moments. This all just kind of feels very unified and together. So several ways that that's working there. Okay, proportion and scale. These two as well are they're the same, but they're different. There's some really key differences here. How they are the same is that they both relate to size or how big or small something is. Where they're different is what the relationship is to everything else. So the definition is the relationship between sizes of elements in your artworks. Scale references the size relationship of one thing to another. So for scale to work, for you to say something is like of scale or out of scale or however you want to go about saying it, you would need to say like you would need to have two things. You would need to have like a let's see, what do I have here with me at the beach? Let's say you have your Pringles can. That'll go into focus. The Pringles can, and then you have the coffee cup. You need both of those things to understand how big or small they are. If you just have the Pringles can, though, and there's no other, it's just a white background. Imagine I'm not here. If you just have the Pringles can, that is just size relationship. That's the size relationship to the whole or proportion. So when you have scale, think about like the relationship between two things. And when you think about proportion, think about the size relationships of parts to a whole. And the best comparison I have for proportion and like what that means is think about when we talk about our body, like we talk about the proportions of our body. So that's just comparing itself to itself. Like for example, again, imagine the white background. You have your hand and it's just your body, just your body. That's all that there is. There's nothing else but the white background. If your hands were 3 times as big as they normally were, you don't need anything else other than yourself to compare that to know that your hands are out of proportion. You don't need another object. However, if you have a white background and you have the Pringles can and you have the coffee, and the Pringles can is like 4 times bigger than it normally would be, you need to have the coffee next to it to understand this is much larger than the coffee, or it's out of scale, out of, the relationship's not the same. So you have to have two things at least to compare to use scale. And for proportion, you just need one thing. So think about your body with that. When you think about your body, you think about proportions, and you are one thing. You're not multiple things. Okay, so how to apply the ingredients. Enlarging a single shape can make it the focal point of the piece. And that can be used to, give extra meaning. It can also make things, more emphasized. Or you can also include it for the meaning of your work. If you want something to be out of proportion intentionally, you can do that in your work, and you can make that choice. So please know that these two are separate principles with two definitions and meanings. They both relate to scale, but they are very different. So I want you to answer, what is out of proportion in the Dali painting? And you can say how as well. Okay. So what is out of proportion is obviously the elephant's legs, right? And this is a great example of how this is a proportional issue and not a scale issue. So imagine, there's no sunset, there's nothing in the background, it's just a white background with the elephant there. Just one elephant. Just think about it as one elephant. You would know that the elephant, the legs are out of proportion to its body. They're very elongated, they're very skinny, they are not how they naturally should be. You don't need any other information to understand that. Now, if the elephant were, in comparison to the rest of this, very small, you might need, other things in context to understand that it's small. If it's just against a white background and it's just being compared to itself, you don't have an idea of how big or small it is if everything is in proportion. So hopefully that makes sense. Proportion and scale are definitely two that get confused very often, or the specific meaning of them gets a little bit skewed. So if you do have questions about that, please let me know, and I will be happy to continue to clarify it the best I can. All right, and I have one more little diagram here for you on scale. And again, this is a scale relationship, not a proportional relationship. The Dali painting that we see here, that is a proportional example. This is a scale relationship. So the exercise here is this circle in the center and this circle in the center. Those are exactly the same size circle, but we see what is around the circles to give us an understanding of the scale. So when we see it around these larger circles, it looks much smaller, or it feels like that's the smallest thing. But when you think about it next to these small circles, it looks like it's the biggest thing. But if you didn't have either of those, if you didn't have any of the surrounding circles, they would be just a circle, right? There's nothing out of proportion that we know of. They just are, a circle. They don't have to be big or small. They are what they are. So hopefully that helps as well. All right. So looks like maybe the trucks are coming. I don't know. I'm gonna go check that out, and I will see you guys next time. Hopefully we get the clocks cleared up.